Although it seems like an endless campaign so far, in just a week, the first actual votes of the 2016 presidential race will be counted. We're curious, what stands out in your mind so far?
Well, I'm horrified by the rancor in the Republican primary.
They're just at each other's throats. There's no unity between the two. It's complete division.
Hillary told me like she seems like she knows her stuff.
I saw some interviews that Bernie Sanders did with just like regular people. I thought that was really cool.
I think they all are saying the same thing except for Trump. He's the only one that I see that's reporting on corruption.
Trump is providing comic relief.
Has he impressed you?
With his sayings, it's more of a comedy, but he has impressed me, yes.
Not really interested in any of the candidates.
What's one word you might use to then sum up the presidential race so far for you?
Unimpressed.
This is the first presidential race where I really don't know who I would vote for.
Well, here's the good news. He has plenty of time to make his mind up. It's time for the OTR Political Roundtable, and this week our analysts are Marianne Marsh on the Democratic side and Republican analyst Eric Fernstrom. Great to have you with us, guys. Appreciate it.
So you heard Dante Scala this morning. Do you see the possibility of a brokered convention for your party?
No, here's what's going to happen at the convention. There'll be 2,472 delegates. We'll either have a clear leader who will be nominated on the first ballot, or we won't have a clear leader, and we'll go to multiple ballots. Now, the last 9 conventions, we had a presumptive nominee going into the convention. So history suggests that is what is going to happen again. If there is a free-for-all, I suggest that the networks and Channel 5 cover all 4 nights, because it's going to be very exciting.
Is he being a little optimistic here, Marianne?
There's not going to be a brokered convention, an insurrection maybe, but no brokered convention. And we'll know in February. Honestly, when you look at the 4 big contests in February, it's going to decide who's going to be the next president of the United States on both sides, okay? So you'll have a very good idea. If Donald Trump wins Iowa, wins North Carolina, he runs the table, he's the nominee, period, end of sentence. Good luck getting rid of him.
So, Eric, if I ask you the obvious question that everyone sitting at home is saying, ask Eric about Mitt Romney.
Right.
Is it possible Governor Romney could be lured back into the race?
No, look, all or most of the
deadlines,
most of the deadlines for getting on the ballot in these state primaries and caucuses and conventions have already passed. So he's not going to be a candidate, and it is highly unlikely that a non-candidate who has amassed 0 delegates is going to emerge as a potential nominee in Cleveland.
Okay, let me translate for everybody at home. When Eric says he won't be a candidate, it means he won't ever run. But if there's ever a brokered convention, as Mitt Romney stands on his dock, longingly overlooking the shores of the frozen Lake Winnipesaukee, hand-rested and ready to get brought in to that brokered convention, he'll be there in a heartbeat.
No, if there's going to be a candidate who emerges, who hasn't been part of the process to the end point in Cleveland, it could potentially be somebody who ran and suspended their campaign but still has delegates. It could be a special interest group leader who controls the votes of some delegates.
Then why?
But even those scenarios
Could
are highly unlikely.
it be Paul Ryan?
Why is Mitt Romney then this week in Washington saying, I think we should raise the minimum wage? I think it should be $15. Saying we shouldn't raise the minimum wage is sending the wrong signal. Hello?
Well,
what does that sound like?
Well, Romney is a leader in the party, so he's going to speak out. He's going to speak out on issues, but he's not a candidate. And I think the candidates who have amassed delegates going into Cleveland might object to somebody who has 0 delegates potentially emerging as a nominee.
Okay, we've picked on the GOP long enough. Let's switch the focus over to the Democrats. What does Clinton have to do after Iowa and New Hampshire if she fails in both those states?
She has to win every single day between New Hampshire and Nevada, all 8 days, every media cycle, every person, every delegate, everything, because the tsunami that is going to hit her will be unbearable if she doesn't, and she won't win Nevada, she won't win South Carolina, and then she's in a whole lot of trouble.
And what about Super Tuesdays? Does she have to win nearly all of those states?
Look, if she loses the first 2, she has to win everything after that. Now, here, the quick strategy here, they're really trying to win Iowa for the slingshot into New Hampshire, which is a 13 to 15 point race for her. It can be done, but boy, is it hard.
What do you see?
Well, look, she'll have the organization and she'll have the money to go on, but expectations have been so high for her from the beginning that if she loses one of the first 2 states, that's problematic. If she loses both, it's devastating. Now, they say they have a firewall in South Carolina and in all the southern states that vote on Super Tuesday. But if she loses the first 2, that firewall crumbles. The whole political calculus changes
It's
for her.
scorched. I don't know that it crumbles.
New Hampshire's not, Bernie Sanders is not ahead 27 points ahead of her.
Please stop reporting the
Okay,
CNN
I'm just
polls.
saying.
I tweet that all the
polls.
time. There's a reason UNH got fired by the Globe, okay, as their pollster.
Okay.
I rest my case
All
on
right,
that.
there you
So it is more a 13 to 15 point race. Now, you come out of Iowa, you usually get, if you win it, you get a 7-point bounce. That cuts it in half. She's got to win a few points on her own in the campaigning, and then the ground game has to pick up the rest. Very tough.
Let's take a look at New Hampshire. If for the first time both of the winners of ultimately of the primary, let's say it's Trump and Sanders, don't end up winning the election, does New Hampshire's first in the nation status evaporate or starts to slide into oblivion, Marianne?
It could. I would hope it wouldn't, but I do think what we're seeing, what Trump has changed, okay? Sanders is a neighbor, a little different story. But everyone knows Trump from reality, from The Apprentice. So they've known him for 20 years. So they've already been well introduced to him, and the person they saw on TV is the person they see in front of them on the ground in New Hampshire. Big difference.
Do you think New Hampshire's state of the first in the nation primary is at stake here in this election?
No. Look, this is what the candidates who are behind in the polls are telling voters in Iowa and telling voters in New Hampshire that if someone who is not them gets nominated, then that puts at risk their first in the nation status.
Yeah, they shouldn't do that.
I don't think it does. I do think Trump and I do think Sanders are clearly the momentum leaders right now going into the first 2 contests, and that's a problem for their opponents.
I have 2 words for you: Sarah Palin. Commercial time, then we'll discuss.